Let me move on to a topic that is related to my favorite topic, and that is touch. Americans are, in general, again this is a generalization, average, in general, are among the least tactile people in the world. We spend a lot of time indulging our other senses, going to great restaurants, perfuming ourselves and our boyfriends with the best smell. But we don't touch enough. And it's a physical need, just like sleep is, just like exercise is, just like relationships are. And it's an important part of relationships. The best work in the area was done by Tiffany Field, who was a massage therapist, and saw the effects of massage, went out, studied this topic, got her PhD, and now is a professor at the University of Miami. And what she showed through her research and other people's research is how important getting in touch with touch is. For example, for physical health, whether it's our immune system strengthens significantly with touch, weakens drastically without sufficient touch. It helps overcome injuries. And that's not just professional massage or professional physiotherapist, just the act of touch. Children grow more when they're touched, and we'll talk about research in a minute, some mind-boggling research. It's physical health, it's also mental health. Once again, children's cognitive development is affected by touch. Mental health in terms of mood disorders, eating disorders are associated very often with lack of touch or not enough touch. Depression and anxiety are caused by lack of touch, can be overcome often with more touch. And hopefully you're convinced now. Better sex life with touch. So William Masters and Virginia Johnson, two of the most important sex therapists and researchers. What they have shown is that sexual dysfunction, most sexual dysfunctions, in fact between 70 and 95% of them, can be solved simply with the help of touch. So what they're saying actually is that foreplay should not just be used as a means toward an end. They're saying that it can be an end in itself. And what touch does is essentially what positive psychology is all about. Sex, no. So, did I say that out loud? Yes, I guess I did. All right, so what positive psychology is about is, remember, getting us from the negative to the zero, but then getting us from the zero to the positive. So what they have shown in their research is that touch helps sexual dysfunction. Okay, let's function, let's get you here. But they're also saying is that touch then contributes to a thriving sexual relationship. So it's not just helping with problems, it's also taking us from the zero to the thriving. Marty Seligman has a book about looking at generally psychological interventions, those that work and those that don't. And as we've talked about in class a lot, most of the interventions do not work. We saw it with the Cambridge Somerville study, where 5 years of interventions actually had a negative effect in the long term. We see it with so many of the self-help books offering quick fixes. They don't work. He researched William Masters and Johnson's studies, and what he found, doing a meta-analysis, is that between 70 and 95% of the time their prescription works. Again, this is almost unheard of in social psychology or social sciences intervention. But these things work. Now, touch is a need, as I said earlier, just like Touch is a need, just like physical exercise is a need, just like food and sleep are needs. So there's a story about a hospital ward for premature babies. And what they found there was that one of the sections in that hospital ward for premature babies had a much higher level of success compared to the other sections in the hospital ward. In other words, the babies were getting better much more promptly. They were healthier. When they followed them in the long term, they actually showed better cognitive as well as physical development. And they were wondering about it, and they thought, could it be the air? Could it be the location in the hospital? Because everything else was identical. They got the same food, they got the same treatment. And one of the doctors really wanted to find out what was it about this specific section in the hospital for premature babies that actually contributed so much to their well-being. So he was, watching the place, and then one night he was just sitting somewhere out of sight, and he heard a sound. And he looked, didn't want to be seen, and a nurse came in, a nurse whom he knew, who'd been in the hospital for a long time. And the nurse walked in, picked up a premature baby, which was against the rules in the hospital, because they cannot be touched. They had to be in their incubators. Picked up the baby and just stroked him. Just touched him very gently. Talked to him, and then put the baby down. And then walked to the next incubator, picked up the baby, and just very gently stroked him and put him back down, and did that to all the babies in that section of the ward. Now, she did it late at night during her shift because it was against the rules. And then she walked out. And that incident spawned off a whole line of research about the importance of touch with babies in general, specifically with premature babies. So Tiffany Fields did this study where premature babies were subject to 45 minutes a day of massage while they were in the hospital. Very gentle massage, they're tiny. And what they found was that these babies put on 47% more weight while they were in hospital. A year later, when they were already at home, they had better development physically as well as in terms of cognitive skills as well as motor skills, just as a result of being touched more often. We need touch. It is an innate, instinctual need. In fact, there's been research on touch deprivation, and it wasn't done on human beings, it was done on monkeys. Harry Harlow, a very famous psychologist, worked with a group of monkeys whom he took away from their mothers, didn't provide them any touch. Every other need was provided. And what he found was that these monkeys didn't grow physically as much as the other monkeys. Their cognitive development was impaired, and they displayed autistic-like behavior. For example, they would sit down, put their legs up, and then rock. Have you seen this? Like in what's the movie with Dustin Hoffman? The Rain Man. Where he would just sit down and rock this way. So many of these monkeys displayed exactly this behavior, this rocking autistic behavior. Cruel study, whether it's done on ants or monkeys, certainly on human beings. Unfortunately, it has been done on human beings. This is one of the largest natural, tragic experiments ever carried out. This specifically was done in Romania, under Ceausescu, the cruel dictator that ruled over the country until 1989. One thing that he did was take many kids away from their parents, especially if the parents were dissidents, especially if the parents were not, quote-unquote, kosher communists. So he took their kids and raised 150,000 kids in homes away from their parents. Now, these homes, because it was a very poor country, had no money for enough nurses, had no money for enough support staff in general. So while these kids got all their physical needs in terms of food, water, and they were cleaned, they did not get much affection. Not because the nurses didn't want to give them affection, they just didn't have the time. In 1989, after the wall fell, Ceausescu was ousted, and these kids were released from these homes. And psychologists went in, and what they saw was the result of this tragic natural experiment. In terms of physical growth, these kids were between 3 and 10% in size relative to their age group. Cognitive growth, the level of way below the 100 IQ average. Motor development also impaired significantly as a result of lack of touch. And many of these kids were sitting down with their legs to their chest and just rocking. The effect of touch deprivation. Now, touch is important, once again, to get us here. And we're here, we're fine. The question is, how do we get beyond this? Well, touch can take us there as well. Not just to being okay, but also to thriving. The importance of touch. Virginia Satir, who's a psychologist, has this to say. We need 4 hugs a day for survival. We need 8 hugs a day for maintenance. We need 12 hugs a day for growth. Again, she says it half, in jest. There is not actual research showing how many hugs. Very good. You have 11 more left for today. But good. So there is, though, actual research on hugs. So this is Jane Clipman, who did research, and here was the intervention, very simple. It was every day give at least 5 hugs. These are frontal hugs, not with your, partner, just hugs to different people, friends, can be your partner as well, but these are specifically non-sexual hugs. And what she found after 4 weeks was that the people who were in this group as opposed to the control group, and the control group had to write how many hours a day they read, the control group level of happiness obviously didn't go up. The group that hugged 5 times a day went up significantly. Now this experiment, when she talks about, she says it was much more difficult for some people, especially for men. But even the men who were part of it, most of them hugged, so they would do it on the sports field, they would find opportunities, or somehow got in 5 hugs a day. And those people who did that actually became happier. Now, I was going to assign this as your response paper this week. I'm not going to do it, but I recommend it. So it's a very strong recommendation and suggestion. From now on and for the rest of your life, at least 5 hugs, preferably 12. The nice thing about hugs is that it's a win-win. Because when we hug someone, we're hugged back. When we touch someone, we're touched back. It's like happiness. When we share it, it grows. It's a win-win, positive-sum game. The important thing to keep in mind about hugs and touch in general is to respect the other person, because not everyone feels as comfortable being touched as we do. Or we may not feel comfortable being touched, and that's fine. For many reasons. One could be upbringing, one could be just physically, people are different. There are some people who enjoy touch much more than others, and that's fine, it's natural. So we need to respect other people's boundaries as well as have others respect our own. But in general, touch is important, touch is good, and we need to become a more tactile individual as well as a more tactile society. Let me show you an example now of how some people like hugs more than others. Okay, so once again, here is the prescription. Very simple. 4 times at least a week of 30 minutes of physical exercise, at least. Mindfulness meditation, if it's good for you, every day 10-15 minutes. If not, at the very least, a few deep breaths strategically placed throughout the day. 8 hours of sleep a night, and at least 5, ideally 12 hugs a day. This is probably the most powerful psychological prescription that you will ever get or hear about. And all it does is bring us back to our base level of well-being, our God-given or genes-given level of happiness.